This animal has been dead for 3,000 years. It was born somewhere far to the south. It drank from one particular river. It ate leaves grown in one particular soil. Then, while it was still young, human hands took it from that place, carried it onto a ship, and sailed it north to a country it had never seen. It never went home. It was cargo from a kingdom the Egyptians called Ta Netjer, God's land, the Land of Punt. For more than 1,000 years, Punt was Egypt's richest trading partner: gold, ebony, ivory, incense by the ton. And then it vanished, not conquered, not burned, forgotten, so completely that the Egyptians themselves lost it. A real country became a fairy tale, and for 3,000 years nobody could say where it had been. The answer was inside this animal the whole time. To understand why Egypt sailed so far, understand what they were sailing for. Every temple in Egypt burned frankincense and myrrh every day, not as decoration, as obligation. The gods required it. Without incense there was no ritual, and without ritual the order of the world came apart, and Egypt could not grow a single one of these trees. So they went looking. The records go back further than almost anything else in Egyptian history, to Pharaoh Sahur, around 2450 BC, before Tutankhamun, before Ramesses, before most of what we picture when we picture Egypt. Egyptian ships were already sailing to Punt. This relationship would last over 1,000 years, longer than the Roman Empire, longer than most countries have existed, and in all that time, Egypt never once tried to conquer it. Around 1477 BC, Egypt was ruled by a woman. Hatshepsut had taken the throne as pharaoh. Not queen, pharaoh, and she was surrounded by people who believed she had no right to it. She needed something no one could argue with, proof that the gods themselves approved. She could have gone to war. Almost every pharaoh who needed legitimacy went to war. She sent a trading fleet instead, 5 ships, 210 men, and a logistical problem that should stop you for a second. The ships were built on the Nile, then taken apart, hauled in pieces across 100 miles of desert to the Red Sea coast, and rebuilt at the water's edge. We know this happened because the harbour is still there. At Mersa Gawasis, archaeologists found the timbers, coils of rope still knotted, and wooden cargo boxes with the words still legible on the side, the wonders of Punt. They sailed south for weeks, and when they finally landed, what they found was not a wilderness, it was a country. Houses built up on stilts, reached by ladders, herds of cattle, gardens, families, and a king and queen who came out to meet them, Parehu and Ati, and greeted the most powerful empire on earth as equals. Sit with that. Egyptian art almost never shows foreigners standing upright. Foreigners kneel, foreigners are bound, foreigners are drawn beneath Pharaoh's feet, small and defeated. At Deir el-Bahari, the people of Punt stand. They negotiate. They are drawn with care, their houses, their animals, their faces, their queen. Whoever carved that wall had been there, had looked at these people, and had come home wanting to get them right. The Egyptians came home carrying gold, ebony, ivory, leopard skins, heaps of raw incense, and 31 living trees, roots balled in baskets, carried onto ships, kept alive across weeks of open sea. They planted them in the terraces of Hatshepsut's temple, so that the incense burned for the god would grow in the god's own house. It is the first attempt in recorded history to move trees from one country to another. Some of the pits are still there. You can stand in front of them. And they brought back the baboons, sacred to Thoth, god of wisdom. The reliefs even show them getting loose on deck during the voyage, climbing the rigging while the crew chases them. Midzunchi store the Muzda to Burupipid. Hatshepsut put the entire voyage on her temple walls. Not a battle, not a massacre. A trading expedition. The ships, the houses, the animals, the queen who met her envoys as an equal. Of everything she did as pharaoh, this is what she chose to be remembered for. The voyages went on for centuries. Ramesses III sent one around 1160 BC. And then the new kingdom came apart. Egypt lost the Red Sea ports. The expeditions stopped, and with them stopped the only reason anyone had to remember the way. Here is the part that should unsettle you. Within a few generations, the Egyptians themselves no longer knew where Punt was. It slid out of geography and into legend. Later Egyptians wrote about Punt the way we write about Eden, a distant paradise, somewhere toward the sunrise, a place their ancestors had touched, a country their great-grandparents had traded with, became a story they half believed, and it stayed lost. For 3,000 years, scholars put Punt in Arabia, in Somalia, as far south as Mozambique. 2 centuries of argument and no answer, because no Puntite city has ever been excavated. No inscription in their language has ever been found. Everything we have of them, we have through Egyptian eyes. Then, a few years ago, researchers went back to the baboons, because here is what a body does. As an animal grows, the water it drinks and the food it eats leave a chemical signature locked into its bones and teeth, oxygen and strontium, in ratios specific to the ground it grew up on, not a memory, a record, permanent and impossible to lie about. They measured the mummies, they compared them against baboons from across the region, and the answer came back. These animals grew up in the land that is now Eritrea, Ethiopia, Djibouti and Somalia, the Horn of Africa, God's land. Every scholar who argued about Punt for 200 years, every map with a question mark on it, and the answer was sitting in a museum drawer the whole time, inside an animal that had been carried away from home and never made it back. It couldn't tell anyone where it came from, but its bones could. So why did it take so long? Partly because we only ever saw Punt through Egypt. They left us no words of their own. But partly because of where the evidence pointed. For 2 centuries, a sophisticated African trading power that met Egypt as an equal did not fit the story being told about Africa. So Punt stayed a mystery, filed under legend, argued over endlessly, while in the Horn of Africa people went on tapping the same trees, the same way, in the same hills, without interruption, for 4,000 years. The trade never died, only the memory of it did. And carved into a wall at Deir el-Bahari, Queen Ati is still standing exactly where a sculptor put her 3,500 years ago, upright, unbowed, an African ruler receiving an empire's envoys as an equal. The stone never forgot her, the bones never forgot home. We were the ones who lost the thread, and it took us 3,000 years to pick it back up. If this is the first one you've found, the Kingdom of Kush is already on the channel. The conquest of Egypt by an African empire, and how that got buried too, and I want to know what you think. Where is the first Puntite city going to be found? Eritrea, Somalia, somewhere nobody's dug yet? Tell me in the comments. Next time, we leave the Nile entirely. West Africa, 3,000 years ago, and a civilization whose masterpieces were being used as scarecrows.